Well, hello there. How is everyone? You amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. It's Monday, baby. It's Monday. We're going straight into another week. What's it going to bring? What's it going to bring? You're looking absolutely amazing. I must add, you must have had a good weekend. I hope you did. Anyway, let's get straight into the meat and potatoes. And before we go anywhere, look, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. Hit the notification bell and like the video. You might not like it, but again, like I always say, do something nice. Karma, remember, what goes around comes around, as said by Justin Timberlake. And if you can't trust Justin Timberlake, who can you trust? Look. But anyway, I need to do this video. I need to call this out because this is insanity to me. This is absolutely insanity to me. And in video 2 later on today, I'm going to be talking about the Gonsalves family and confirmation that I had that Christy Gonsalves believes that this was also, like we do, a multiple perpetrator crime. It's important to talk about that. So again, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss that later. But in this video, we're talking about this. And I think I've got another video coming tomorrow, which is going to address something else regarding Bryan Kohberger and his apparent Googling of this crime or searching up this crime before the 911 call, because I think if you don't work out what's going on there, then you're clearly not following stuff. But I just want to ram that home too. So we've got a few things to talk about this week, and I'm going live on Wednesday to go over the doc. If you missed the live last night, we went through the other doc. Don't forget to go and have a check that out if you find yourself bored. But let's look at this. What are we talking about? We're talking about this. Why Idaho murders roommates waited so long to call 911, revealed in new Bryan Kohberger documents. So the 8-hour time delay between what happens, calling 911, apparently that's all been revealed. Gonna explain all that, put it to bed. No longer will we be thinking 8 hours, mate. Where'd that? This is gonna ram that home, finally. Oh, I can't wait. Let's get into it. Terrifying new details have emerged in the University of Idaho murder case, with a bombshell court order revealing how a surviving roommate says she saw one of the victim's bodies minutes after coming face to face with a masked killer inside their home. So let's just... I don't understand how people, when we call this kind of situation out, this kind of behaviour, that they lose their shit and attack us for raising something that is so blatantly bizarre that it makes no sense. It makes no sense that people can't fathom that it's not right. You're saying you're scared. You're saying your hair and stuff. We're seeing text messages between Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, right? And I'm scared. I saw this. I saw someone in the house with a fucking mask on, and then she leaves her room to go to Bethany Funk, and upon leaving that room and heading to Bethany Funk, she apparently looks at Xana's room and sees Xana laying on the floor. Well, what people have also kind of not considered is this would have been what, around 4:30 in the morning. Would it have been pitch black, or would she? Because she was able to physically see her and see which way she was laying, so she's seen that. What, and she saw nothing else? Well, we've been told that this scene was horrendous, that Xana in particular had put up somewhat of a fight, and we've heard about, some of the injuries sustained. But so Dylan Mortensen walks past, sees her laying there, carries on fucking walking to Dylan Mortensen's room, Bethany Funk's room, sorry, and it's like, oh, fuck that, I'll breeze that, that's fine. And carries on with the evening, where they're seemingly still trying to ring people. Why would you be trying to ring someone when they're laying on the floor? You've seen them laying on the floor. Why would you not just go and see them? Why would you not go and check on them? Why would you not go and pull their leg? You know what I mean? And be like, so not only have we got the issue surrounding the door and what now turns out to be utter shite about the door being shut, couldn't open the door, unless something happened between the time that she walked by that door and got to Bethany Funk's room. Was somebody still there? Did something happen after that? Was she just passed out on the floor then? If you didn't see any other kind of carnage, then it could be argued that the person you saw left, and people inside the house were still alive, and they in fact died or was attacked after you saw them. This is just my mind trying to process and make sense of what you're claiming to see. Earlier information about the door being shut and needing Hunter to forcibly get the door open to get into the room. There's so many questions around this. Like Hunter Johnson, right? You're thinking, so you during the 911 call, for instance, there was no mention of Ethan. It is literally just Xana who was mentioned on that call. And they're saying, Xana. Why is there no mention of Ethan if they're in close proximity to one another? It's something, again, it's just a question that floats around in my pea brain. But let's get back into it, right? So it says what survivors Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk saw and heard in the early hours of November 13, 2022 will play a central role in the looming trial of suspect Bryan Kohberger. Kohberger is accused of killing 4 roommates, Anna Canodal, Kayla Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, and Ethan Chapin in you can see it on the screen, a frenzy in their shared student home. Mortensen and Funk called 911, let's put it as it is, 8 hours later. Bombshell new court records reveal that Mortensen saw a man, who prosecutors say was Kohberger, walking past her bedroom door in the early hours of the morning at around 4 a.m. She told investigators that she emerged from her room and saw Xana laying on the floor, presumably dead, but thought she was drunk and had passed out. Mortensen carried on towards Funk's room, and together they stayed there until daylight. So when they come back out of that room, did they not walk back to the room, see her still laying there? I'm not buying the 911 call. The 911 call to me, and I was talking, Eddie emailed me last night, and I think he thinks exactly the same. The 911 call that we have heard or seen, do you know what I mean? That to me, the timing of that seems off. The timing of it seems really, really off. And I can't figure out, when you factor these into what must have been known, how the 911 call sounded the way it did. If that bedroom door was open, and if that bedroom door ended up shut after she's walked past it and seen Xana through the friggin' doorway, then something else was going on in that house. This wasn't over at the time they claimed it was over. It carried on. But let's have a look. So DM then exited the room, began running towards BF's bedroom. On her way, she noticed Anna lying on the floor of her bedroom with her head towards the wall and her feet towards the door. DM thought Anna was drunk. The records state around 8 hours later, the roommates called 911 after realising their friends were dead. So they're saying that they called 911, they called them after realising they were dead. But that's not how the call sounds, is it? It's not a realization that they are indeed dead, and then they call and clearly state on there, look, something happened, and we've got dead people here. That's not how that call went. In fact, at one point they mention in that call that there is something happening, like they're making a 911 call in the midst of something continuous going on in the property. There is something going on here. Check it out. Go and look. Go and look yourself. New details about her terrifying ordeal and the events of that night were revealed in Judge Stephen Hibbler's court order Thursday, as he ruled that jurors will hear that 911 call at Kohberger's trial this summer. So I'm still waiting for the explanation for the 8 hours. The court finds that some of the hearsay statements on the 911 call do not qualify under exceptions cited by the state and therefore must be redacted, Hippler ruled. The judge will also allow jurors to see the call transcript as well as text between the surviving roommates during those terrifying hours. However, the balance of the 911 call as well as the text and conversations noted herein are likely admissible, provided that the requisite foundation is laid at trial. The transcript will be allowed as demonstrative aid, again assuming proper foundation is established. This marks yet another blow to suspected killer Kohberger, who wanted to ban the call and text from his high-profile trial. But let's not make no bones about it. This is the reason why they're trying to ban the call is more because they appreciate that when you see and hear things, it can play a very strong emotional part of the story, and people buy on emotion. We as human beings buy on emotion, whether that be physical, tangible objects or stories. If there is an element to it that strikes a chord, then people are gonna feel a certain way. There's gonna be a emotional response, and in that call, people are going to become upset. They're going to become angry, and they're going to shift that focus towards Bryan Kohberger as he is the accused. But I think that the questions here aren't so much about the call itself as about trying to make sense of all of the information surrounding that call. Because if you're saying you see someone in the house, they were wearing a mask, you're scared, there is proof and evidence that you were compass mentis enough to work out that there was something going on and you was having an emotional response to that, and that being scared, you've come out of your room, you've looked at your housemate, and you've seen them laying on the floor, but your excuse is, well, I just thought they were drunk. Well, you've seen someone in the house and you're scared, and your friend is laying on the floor drunk? I don't understand it. So even if you think, well, they were on the floor drunk, you're still scared because you've seen someone in the house. I still can't establish a reasonable reason why you wouldn't contact 911. There is no excuse for that. You've gone. It seems like you have purposefully not called 911, or something else has gone. And then when on top of that, we're hearing that there was a potential for a cleanup. Again, my brain goes to the fact that I think you've gone to the room. I think you've gone to the room and seen what's happened. It's the latent footprint is your own latent footprint. I believe that latent footprint is likely Dylan Mortenson's footprint, and they're trying to cover the fact that they knew what had happened hours before the 911 call was made, the eventual 911 call that would bring law enforcement and emergency responders to 1122 King Road. And that, to me, that concealment, that not reporting an incident when you first knew about it, that is an offence. That is an offence, and that to me is leverage. If you've made, if there is an offence being created, we can see as lay people that there is an offence here, and they could be leveraged. Who knows what they would be willing to accept and present as their version of events on behalf of law enforcement if they have been leveraged in some way. Because I don't know, it seems very off. But anyway, I'm waiting for the explanation for the 8 hours. So let's have a look. In another order Tuesday, the judge also refused to rule out the death penalty despite his recent autism diagnosis. The 30-year-old criminology PhD student is facing the death penalty for the murders of Ethan Chapin, Anna Knodel, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves in Moscow, Idaho, back on the 13th of November 2022. The 4 University of Idaho students were brutally killed in the early hours of the morning in the off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho, that the 3 young women shared with their 2 other roommates. The horror murders, the first homicide in 7 years for the small, tight-knit college town, plunged the community into fear and sent shockwaves across the country. Around 6 weeks later, on December the 30th, 2022, police swooped on Kohberger at his parents' home in the Poconos region of Pennsylvania and charged him with the murders. A not guilty plea was entered on his behalf at his arraignment. People should tell Howard Blumber that we're already past the plea phase. He seems to be struggling with that. The Washington State University student was tied to the murders through DNA found on a K-bar leather knife sheath left behind by the killer at the scene. The issue that I have with the DNA is that we've not seen the work. Someone messaged yesterday and was like, DNA doesn't lie. DNA doesn't lie. He did it. That's it. All I need to see is the DNA. Then you're a fucking idiot, because we've got other evidence of DNA at the scene. We've got blood at the scene. We've got undisclosed DNA found under the fingernails of one of the victims. And I like the way that they try and counteract that by saying they're quite clever with it. The toxicology report that they allude to, suggesting that, well, this couldn't have been got under her fingernails from her attacking back or fighting back because she was just too drunk. They're very clever at what they do. Very clever. Whenever there's a question in the public that seems to be going around, there's a rebuttal to that to try and explain it. But it just explain why there's DNA at the scene, multiple DNAs on a crime that absolutely reeks of being a multiple perpetrated crime. Says Mortensen came face to face with an intruder inside the off-campus student home that night. Remember, they said about 3 feet away as well. 3 feet away. That is less than the depth of a sofa. That's how close they were, apparently, and they let her live. Making her the sole surviving eyewitness who saw the perpetrator who murdered her friends. Judge Hippler's new court order revealed that new details about Mortensen's account of that night. The 4 victims and their roommates had all spent the night of Saturday, November 12 out at bars or parties. Around the same time that this play was going on as well, the PTSD at the University of Idaho, what is it, like a theatre? Interesting. I'll talk about that soon as well. Around 2 a.m., Mortensen, Funk, Gonsalves, and Mogan were back at home on 1122 King Road and met up in Caney's bedroom and talked for a while before going to bed, the document states. Knodel and Chapin, who had been at a frat party, were not home yet. The 4 friends debated going out to the food truck for a late snack, but ultimately went to bed. According to investigators, around 4 a.m., Mortensen heard strange noises in the home, followed by a man's voice. That was not Chapin, saying something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm here to help you." When she peered around the bedroom door, she saw a man walk past her room on the second floor and head in the direction of the back sliding door. The intruder, she described, was tall, dressed all in black, and was wearing a mask. Due to the mask, Mortensen could only see eyes and eyebrows of a figure. This is a load of shite. The only time she mentioned eyebrows was when she was prompted to by law enforcement. That's very important to understand that. And recalled seeing his bushy eyebrows. Again, this statement here is false. This is false. She didn't recall seeing bushy eyebrows at all. She just was led by investigating officers who were interviewing her, and this was implanted in her brain at a time when she was very receptible to having ideology placed in her brain. Following that terrifying encounter, Mortensen placed a series of panicked calls and texts to her roommates. Only Funk answered. The others were already dead, which... Between 4:22 and 4:26 a.m., Mortensen and Funk exchanged a string of texts where they frantically tried to determine what was going on in their home, at no point calling 911. Again, I'm still waiting for this explanation. I like the fact that they've got this on this ad as well, just happened to have fucking Ted Bundy sitting there. Mortensen, whose room was on the second floor, along with Knodel's, then ran to Funk's room on the first floor. Gonsalves and Moga's rooms were on the third floor. DM then exited her room and began running towards BF's bedroom. On her way, she noticed Xana lying on the floor of her bedroom with her head towards the wall and her feet towards the door. So she saw enough to see the positioning. She recalled the positioning, knew exactly how she was. She thought Xana was drunk because regularly Xana would be that drunk that she would be laying on the floor in her bedroom. That was normal, apparently. Once DM arrived at BF's room, they locked the door and both made additional unanswered calls to other roommates. Over the next 8 hours, Mortensen's cell phone data shows she made several more texts and calls to her roommates, while also creating, editing, and deleting images and videos and accessing various social media sites, including Instagram and Snapchat, court documents show. On Snapchat, she used the Snap Map function to try and check Chapin and Knodel's location. Why would you do that if you've just seen Xana Knodel laying in her fucking doorway? That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. There was still no response from any of the 4 victims. At 11:50 a.m., Mortensen called a friend and asked her to come over and check the house because she was scared. The document states. This is 11:50 a.m. She finally, at 11:50 a.m., calls a friend and asks them to come over and check the house because she was scared. The friend EA, her boyfriend HJ, Hunter Johnson, came to the home and met Mortensen and Funk at the bottom floor of the 3-story house. Two roommates and HJ made their way to the second floor, where HJ went to the kitchen to grab a kitchen. The document states, according to the documents, Mortensen and Funk then saw Canodal lying on the floor. For the second time now, remember, because she's already seen her. Mortensen testified to the grand jury that she saw Canodal that time for a split second and just started bawling because thought she had just don't even know. Thought maybe she was just still drunk and all asleep on the floor. At that moment, HJ told the young woman to get out and they all went outside. When HJ emerged from the house soon after, he was pale white and mentioned something about someone being unconscious, the document states. He told them to call 911 and the distressing phone call was placed. Kohberger's defense wanted the judge to ban the jurors from seeing the text, blah, 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 which we know. Says the defense claimed that despite stating she was scared, Mortensen ran to BF's room instead of leaving the house or otherwise calling other friends or family for help. The judge disagreed, writing that the events are sufficiently startling to both Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk for purposes that the excited utterance exception. DM and Bethany Funk are young female college students with self-described scaredy cats of the house. But if you're scared, then call fucking 911. You might be scaredy cats. You've seen someone in your house. You've walked past and seen your mate laying on the floor, which I can't fathom for the life of me how you've not managed to see the fucking carnage around it if it's right that what was told about the scene itself, and you don't call 911. I don't understand. They are awoke from the sleep after a night of drinking, and Dylan Morrison reporting that she heard noise and saw a masked intruder in her home. None of the other roommates responded to their calls and texts, further indicating something was amiss. Yes, exactly. It would be potentially terrifying for anyone. So terrifying that a 5-year-old child would have called 911. Including these young women. To argue that they would have run out of the house or called someone else for help had they been really startled unemphatically ignores these circumstances and the trauma and confusion they were evidently experiencing, which likely offset logical thought. They were clearly under stress and attempt to make sense of a frightening situation. So they're basically saying that they didn't call 911 because they were so fucking scared. But they were making other calls. They were trying to call other people in the house. They eventually at 11:50 called a friend to come over to the house. She's seen a mate laying on the floor in the doorway. If you're a scaredy cat, call 911, man. There is no excuse for it. I'm not going to read any more of that. It's just their explanation. I wanted to get to the explanation just to show how fucking lunacy it is. Absolute lunacy. Children consistently call 911 in the event of break-ins or an attack or their parent has been hurt. You hear it all the time. These are not children. These are young adults. They might have had a drink or whatever, but they hear a noise, they see someone, a stranger in the house with a mask on. She leaves her room and goes to another person's room in the house, and upon doing so, the door is open, she sees a friend laying on the floor. She sees it to the point where she knows that her head's that end, her feet are this end, and continues to try and find their location. They're doing videos, they're taking pictures, they're deleting things, they're contacting family members. We've seen all this, but at no point is 911 called until much later. And then again, as we mentioned at the beginning of this video, you're also hearing that there was evidence of the crime scene being cleaned up. That is indicative of them knowing everything that needed to be known way before the 911 call was made. Make it make sense. Tell me I'm wrong. I can't make sense of it. And it needs to be called out because it's not fucking right. And anybody who can sit there and say that this is all right and it is okay behaviour and there isn't an issue with it, it isn't problematic, you're saying so because you have no skin in the game. If this was your children who had been slaughtered on that night and you're hearing this information, I bet my bollocks to a barn dance you'd feel different about it. But anyway, love you all. I'll catch you in video 2 later. Oh.